wished to create right from the very beginning. For without such a radical network of terrorists, the long-planned war on terror would never have been possible. In 2000, a neoconservative think tank called the Project of the New American Century released a document entitled Rebuilding America's Defenses. Outlined in that document was a plan for full-spectrum dominance of the globe. Air, land, sea, space, the internet, everything. In that document it said, and I quote, "The process of transformation, even if it brings about a revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event, like a new Pearl Harbor." 1 year after George W. Bush gained office, in the most contested election in US history, and many prominent members of PNAC were given positions in his administration, America experienced its new Pearl Harbor, and the entire PNAC plan was put into effect. Coincidence? When the events of September the 11th, 2001 unfolded, the troops were already there waiting to go into Afghanistan, and the Patriot Act and Homeland Security legislation had already long been drawn up. They were already there, just waiting for the right event in order to introduce them. So when 9/11 happened, cui bono? Who benefited? Afghanistan? Iraq? Did any Arab country? No. But the Bush administration was given an open checkbook with which to take control of the Afghani poppy fields, the Iraqi oil fields, and the oil-rich and natural gas-rich Caspian Basin. And all protest to the invasions of the two countries was squashed before it started. Then the 7/7 bombings in London occurred, and again, who benefited? Islamism? Hardly. But support for the war in Iraq knew no bounds. The Blair government secured a massive increase in police and military funding, and was also able to install thousands of domestic surveillance cameras throughout England. And then, amid massive war protests in Australia, we saw the Bali bombing, and yet again, who benefited? A Muslim cleric who suddenly found himself wanted by the CIA and the centre of world attention? No, but all anti-war protests in Australia suddenly dissipated. The Australian Prime Minister John Howard received a huge boost in popularity. The Australian police got to establish themselves as the local police of the entire Australasian region. And both the Australian and the Indonesian military secured massive increases in funding. So who really benefited? The real facts, and as can be seen clearly by examining the evidence in all three cases, is that each one of these so-called terrorist attacks was a false flag operation designed to remove more rights from the people of Western countries, and to further consolidate the hold the international banking elite has over our world. The information on all these cases exists. It's out there in the public domain. Please do the research, because the media is just not telling you. A large portion of Al-Qaeda funding comes from the Pakistani ISI, and it still does. And yet the ISI is an openly admitted and funded wing of the CIA. The CIA created hundreds of thousands of extremists and trained them in radical Islamic thinking, and it kept a database on them all. All these extremists still receive funding from the CIA channeled to them via the ISI, and don't even realize who they are funded by. Osama bin Laden has been a CIA asset right from the start, and when the US decided to go after bin Laden, they used the name of the CIA database as a terrorist organization. The war on terror is fake. It's a setup. There is no global network of terrorists waiting around every corner to blow everybody up. It's a myth. All the bombings are carefully orchestrated and follow a noticeable pattern, and you are never given the true facts or an objective look at the evidence in any one of these cases. And just think about it. A few years ago, no one had ever heard of Al-Qaeda. Yet now, almost every mishap in the world is blamed on them, and yet no one can seem to find any of them. Occasionally, some CIA asset that we've never seen before comes on the screen and says a few condemning words, and we're supposed to take that as confirmation. Can you see how easy it is for them to pull this scam off simply by controlling the media? And while people have been distracted and living in fear of terrorism, international law enforcement borders have been slowly eroded away. For example, to clean up after the recent tornadoes in America, Canadian soldiers were used. Australian and Indonesian police now routinely train together. And now remember here that Indonesian police have a reputation for being amongst the most brutal in the world. And yet here we have Indonesian and Australian police swapping ideas and methods. Many people have been trained to think that to talk about this stuff is to be anti-American. But nothing could be further from the truth. The perpetrators of all of this are based mainly in England and Europe. They are just using the military might of America to carry out their plans because they have usurped the American government. American President George W. Bush all but subverted the entire US Constitution and he robbed the country blind. However, it must be understood that it is not America itself doing this. The people who are doing this have set themselves up globally. Remember the words of JFK.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine.
We know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. You know something? They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago.
There are a myriad of theories being put forth by people who have ideas about the changes that are occurring to our Earth, to our societies, and to our way of life. There are thousands, and perhaps now even millions of individuals around the world researching and debating the finer points of the many unanswered questions surrounding the 9/11 attacks, and perhaps just as many debating the realities of Planet X. Such people, who know that in some way something is going on, are very much on the right track, because something is most definitely going on. The problems we face and the realities of our world, our history, our future, our education, our media, our governments, our monetary systems, and our beautiful planet can sometimes seem overwhelming, and Planet X answers all the questions. In fact, right when it was needed in our modern history, Planet X appeared as a perfect and conveniently timed solve to the riddle. But you have to be careful with that, because when trying to get to the bottom of what is happening to this world, it's important to remain objective. Don't go for the easy fix. See the big picture. Something is indeed going on, and it is all around you. All I can ask is that you stop, just for a moment, and look around you. All the world is a stage. Those who control it can make people believe anything they want, and they have unlimited resources and funds with which to do it. Think. Organisations such as FEMA spend less than 6% of their annual budget on domestic security. The rest goes on black budgets. These people talk in billions of dollars a day, and they have technology far more advanced than anything the public has access to. $1 billion is kind of a hard number for the average person to really get their head around. Most people simply think of it as big. So let me try and put it in some kind of perspective for you. 1 billion seconds ago, it was 1959. 1 billion minutes ago, it was the time of Jesus. 1 billion hours ago,